Ravenstein?
Ravenstein.
I know. Yeah, right?
Okay.
Goes both ways. And Beth is the director of East Coast sales at Square. She's been there for 7 years. She's also been a part of a number of abundant programs and events over the last few years, and just as an amazing leader in the marketplace who I'm excited to interview today and have her share some of her perspectives, her knowledge, and just her experience on her journey as a leader and the different ways that she's grown. So Beth, welcome to the show, and it's great to be here with you today.
Thank you. Hi, Ben. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. You know, Beth, an interesting place to start is, you know, Square is an organization that is a lot more visible now in the marketplace, right? It's like from little white reader to industry leader. And you remember that came up in our first sales core meeting
Yes.
a while back.
Good tagline.
Good tagline. And, you know, Square's making waves in the marketplace, stock price way up, all this stuff. And people are like, man, what a great train to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a great train to be on. And you've seen such a huge journey, you know, 7 years ago to today and what the organization is. And I think, you know, an interesting place to start is just like, what's it like being committed to an organization as it goes through so many different growth phases?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a really exciting ride. I think I joined Square kind of in my mid to late 20s, and I never thought that I would be there for that long. I think when you're in technology sales, when you're in an industry that there's so much opportunity around every corner, you kind of always have your eyes and ears open for that next thing. And so, as a lot of us sales professionals know, it's about timing of, you know, product market fit, when you join the team, and sort of your place along that growth path. So, you know, I joined Square. I knew I wanted to be there for a solid amount of time, but to me, that was like, okay, 2-3 years, we'll see. I think the reason I've stayed so long personally is each year feels like just the beginning. And I say that probably in two aspects. Like, aspect number one is our product innovation has just been incredible. And it feels like we're selling into new markets, we're selling new products, we're reaching new customers, we're pushing the boundaries. And so every year it's like a different tool and a different solution. And that has been really exciting. And then complementing that every year has been this really nice blend of being challenged, but being supported in my own personal development, my career development, and my journey there. So I've had the experience of doing 3 different roles over these past 7 years. I've been in 2 different offices, and I've had countless different, you know, peers and leads to learn from. And so I think just the combination of those 2 things has really kept me excited. And I'm also learning that with tenure and with knowledge comes really a lot of insight and influence and value. And so that's been interesting too.
Yeah. You were in San Francisco at one point, right?
Yeah.
Bummer. I mean, your soul belongs in New York, you know, like you got that, but you're not out here, you know?
Hey, bi-coastal, I'm all about that.
There you go. Right. Yeah. You just need to get a Tahoe place. Vermont, you know, Tahoe. That's where you need to come ski, right? So awesome. Yeah. And there's also, you know, what Square has done to have you be excited to stick around. And also there is always something else around the corner. You know, you're in sales, you start leading teams, you move up, and you know, you're getting the calls, you're getting the emails. Recruiters are like,
oh, yeah,
did right? And there's also you being willing to build something. And I, you know, it's very typical, the mindset that you had in your early 20s of 2-3 years and then like figure out the next step. It's like playing the game that everybody else was playing. In fact, I saw a report a couple of years ago that in San Francisco, the average tenure is 18 months for somebody in software sales, which is in large part it's a huge problem because it's really hard to build something meaningful if there's a revolving door, right? Like real change takes time. And also, I think there's feedback for the marketplace in terms of, you know, a lot of people think that's a product of millennials having short attention span and they want the world given to them. And if they don't have it, then they're entitled and they go look for it elsewhere. That may or may not be true. But also there's feedback in that of like what millennials want. And I think the marketplace is actually changing a lot because of that as millennials come into leadership. But that 18 months is a reflection of not having the sense of meaning, not feeling like I'm a part of something that really matters, not having the sense of connection that I'm desiring, and I'm not getting anywhere else in my life. And so I'm hoping work will provide it. And it's really a reflection of that we believe at Abundant more than anything else. And so just to speak to that, what do you see that Square has done to create that sense of meaning and to actually, you know, it's not just about the stock price, like we care about that, but if an organization is just motivated by stock price or, hey, we're going to IPO, and when we IPO, you're all going to make a bunch of money. As exciting as that may sound, it actually doesn't keep people around.
Yeah.
Engaged deepest. So I'm curious what your perspective is on that and what you've seen Square do, and also what you try to do as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think this stood out to me really early on at Square as being a unique and special place in that regard, having worked prior at successful startups where the mentality was a little bit more like, let's be the industry leader, let's take over the world, let's make a lot of money. There's a lot of excitement and fun in that. But it stems from Jack. So Jack Dorsey is like an incredible leader, and he is so altruistic. I remember at one of my first company-wide meetings, he had a quote up from Maya Angelou, and he talks about meditating, and he's just so different than like your typical business leader, or at least the ones that I had experienced. And so I think a lot of that connection and inspiration stems from the top with his leadership and trickles down into our culture as an organization. Square's always been a very mission-driven company, and there's a strong purpose. Our purpose is to provide economic empowerment. And that has never rang more true than over the past 12 months as we've all gone through COVID and such challenge across the world, not only with the economy, but social injustices. And I think that Square has an incredibly inclusive culture and a progressive one. And I think that comes from Jack. And so it does provide a space where you can be a part of it. We have meetings that are simply called Safe Space, and you show up and it's an hour long. And if you want to talk about something that's going on, you can do it, right? So there's a lot of constructs that have been created from him and from other leads that I think create a real sense of community and belonging in the company.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's really important because if like culture is always co-created by every leader in the organization, right? Square is thousands of people.
Yeah.
So the culture it's not Jack.
Right.
It's not just Jack. But also, in some ways, it is always a reflection of the leader. And the ceiling to a culture within any organization is the embodiment of whoever is leading that organization. Meaning, is the leader, is the CEO, is the leadership team embodying the culture, or is it just an idea?
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting with Jack is I don't know him. I did speak on stage before him at SKO last year, which was cool, as he arrived in his motorcade, right, with his security. That's right. But he's not, he's not like in everything at Square. He's not leading conversations about culture necessarily, but he is leading culture through who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just an interesting point to make, especially because he's not so in all the day to day, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's very much out of it. I mean, he's running 2 companies, right? And so
that we know about.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because he has a lot of, how he leads, like you said, shows up in who he is and what he speaks out about, and just his presence and his nature. And it's definitely taught me about leadership, and also being part of the Abundant program, but how leading is really about being, the whole person. It's especially nowadays, you can't separate work and life, right? Like, you have Instagram, people follow you, everything is connected, especially now we're all working from home. And so, it's more important than ever to be a leader as like one whole person versus these personas of business versus separate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's even as we're having this conversation, it's like, yeah, I don't think that Abundant would be as involved with Square if Jack wasn't who Jack is.
Yeah.
Just because of what he stands for and the things that he does. And so that's just interesting. So to kind of go back here to another question, you've been around for 7 years, and what's the value that you've seen of that in committing, and not playing the 2 to 3 year game? Because I think a lot of people who experience success start to look like what's around the corner and like what might I be missing out on, and that can lead to growth in your career. But like we talked about, if it's a revolving door, you're also missing out on your opportunity to become influential and to make a real lasting, meaningful impact. Mm-hmm. And that is a perspective that I think a lot of young high performers and leaders would be served to adopt, and recognizing, hey, if you actually want to create an impact and do something meaningful and play the long game of where you really want to get to in your career, there's actually a lot of value in sticking it out through the challenges, through the uncertainty, and actually seeing that as an opportunity for you to lead and to have an influence. So I'm curious what you've seen there for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of a few things that come to mind on this topic. Like, myself included, a lot of people want to leave for a new opportunity because they want to be challenged, they want to grow. In the technology world, I think a lot of people view themselves as builders. They want to go build something new. They want to maybe run the show. They want to make decisions, and they want to have like a broad scope of influence. And so it's tempting to say, hey, I could go run sales at this 20-person startup. Like, that sounds awesome. And I've been there in my career a few times, tempted by something like that. But I think there's a misconception that at large companies or in more established organizations, you're not actually building and growing and still have a lot of influence. I think what I've seen at Square is that, right now I'm building a brand new team in Atlanta. And so it's almost like I am the VP of sales, right? It's a new office, it's a new market. We're hiring new managers, we're ramping people, we're setting quotas in a new region, and we're doing all those things, but I'm doing it with the support and the context and the backing of sort of this larger ecosystem that I'm already a part of. Mm-hmm. So, like, first and foremost, I think sometimes there can be a misconception of if you're in a big company, it's slow or it's not exciting and you're not really building. I think also the value of context is so key, particularly when new people come on board or you're working cross-functionally. Sometimes if you've been around and you can say, oh, we tried that in the past because of X and it didn't work out because of Y, you're the smartest person in the room. And you know what? You really didn't do anything but just relay something that you had experienced. And so it's kind of a fun place to be, like the historian of the group, where you can really provide that context and then build from there, instead of, you know, maybe kind of cycling back and retrying or repeating habits or mistakes that maybe didn't work. So just a few thoughts there.
Yeah. Awesome. You know, something else that's coming to mind about your journey is, I know we've had conversations and you've shared that your view, I mean, of course, we still will see what the future holds for everybody, including yourself, but you started to see the possibility of a career with Square.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really powerful. And the interesting thing about that is, you know, I think a lot of people with the 2 to 3 year game, it's 2 to 3 years, achieve, get myself to a position, you know, resume, blah, 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 status, get better offers. And maybe the next thing will be the thing that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Next opportunity, 2 to 3 years. And honestly, it's usually still the same game if people are from that same mindset. Hey, 2 to 3 years here, and then we'll see what's around the corner. And maybe that'll be the thing that I wanted. And some people do that again and again, find themselves 15 years career, still wondering, well, like, what do I actually want?
Mm-hmm.
Hoping that the next thing will reveal it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what I've seen with you is that what's funny is actually the vision of sticking with Square has become more attractive as you've gotten more clear on what your vision is for yourself as a leader. And I'm curious if you can share a bit about that and how the vision isn't necessarily attached to Square, but your vision being more clear to you then creates the pathway for you to work in more meaningful ways and view your career in more meaningful ways within Square.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the vision piece for me was really helpful to tap into, because it wasn't just Square. It was, is it sales? Is it technology? Is it something else? You know, I've definitely thought about different avenues and other interests where, hey, am I just doing this because I graduated college and I was in Silicon Valley and I fell into it? Should I make a change, right? But I definitely firmly believe that you can achieve, you know, your purpose or your vision through a number of different means, and that your career is really kind of just one pathway to achieve that. And it could look 5 or 10 different ways. But how I guess came a little bit closer to understanding what truly motivated me was through a couple coaching conversations with the Abundant team, as well as just spending a fair amount of time reflecting. And when I think about where I want to go, I think like one of the most helpful things you can look to is, well, where have you been and how did it lead you to where you are today? So when I looked into my past, I started kind of accounting for all these big moments in my life that led me to, you know, my current world. And so the first big moment that really stood out when I was kind of going through that journey was going to college on the West Coast. I got a full ride field hockey scholarship to Stanford. And that was probably like, wow, this is the biggest moment of my life. You know, I'm getting an amazing education paid for to play a sport that I love. I get to move to California from Maryland. That's really cool. And then that was this launching point to then get me into Silicon Valley, get me into a small startup that went public 4 years later, start to build some personal wealth, get to live in the Bay Area and fall in love with wine and meet my husband and, all these things that kind of just like domino effect where you're like, wow, what if I never got that one opportunity? How different would my life look? Mm. And so, not to digress too much, but when I think about that opportunity, I connected it for the first time with Title IX. And I was like, wow, you know what? Like, field hockey is not a West Coast sport. It's not a money-making sport. What if Title IX never existed and Stanford never had a field hockey team? Well, none of those other things that I had just described would have then fallen into place. And I'm sure I would have lived this other amazing life, but it would have looked really different. And so it brought me closer to this connection of just feeling really grateful for the women that had come before me and that had made this opportunity a reality for me. And it gave me a little more inspiration to pay it forward. And so I had this mental shift where I kind of felt like I had almost an obligation to give back to women and champion opportunities for those who may come behind me, because that was given to me and I've been able to step into everything that I've had, kind of, if I boil it back down to that one moment, which, arguably it's probably not all just that one moment, but it was a big light bulb. And so I've really connected to this purpose now of being a female leader and really inspiring those behind me to step into, their own power as a female in business.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know your vision, but I've never heard you describe it going all the way back to Title IX. So that's really cool. And it makes sense. And honestly, I'm like, oh, it's the same for me. People sometimes ask, like, why does Abundant focus on working with sales leaders? It's like, well, because I was a sales leader and Zach was a sales leader and a lot of people on our team were sales leaders. And so we want to make that path easier for people who are coming behind us.
Right.
Not just to hit great numbers, but really to be fulfilled leaders who are making an impact. So that's a cool way to hear you describe it.
Yeah.
And Square happens to be a place that has some amazing women leaders. Mm-hmm. Alyssa, Ashley, I mean, we could go down the list, right? I think a lot of organizations are curious about how to create an environment that attracts powerful, strong, influential, and like authentic women leaders, right? Not just women leaders who are playing the game of like, how can I outman the men, right? But I could be a woman. And I'm curious, just what's your perspective on what Square does to create that, and also how you try to create that environment for the women you lead.
Mm-hmm. Well, with Square, I think authenticity is key, no matter whether you're a man, you're a woman, whatever role you're in. It's one of our core values is really showing up and being your authentic self. But I do think there's an element of, there's this kind of notion that you can't be what you can't see. And I think that the fact that, again, back to Jack has female leads reporting directly to him, and they cascade that energy down. Ashley's our head of sales. She brings a lot of her full self forward and shares, not only her vision for the team and for work, but she talks about her kids and she opens up her life. And I think that, as we talked about earlier, work and life are so integrated and intertwined these days, it's inspiring to have leaders that bring that forward. I think for me, it's kind of silly, but I've been obsessed with Elle Woods like ever since I saw Legally Blonde. I think that she's like the epitome of um, just this like badass female sort of icon leader, where she's so feminine in everything that she does. You know, she's gorgeous. She's always in pink. She's you know, this caricature, a little over the top, but she's smart. She, you know, is top of the class. She wins the legal battle. She proves everyone wrong who didn't think that she could get in. And so I I love to embody, like, ideally, both of those sides. Like, I love to play up the feminine, but then also still be strong and powerful. And so I think when female leaders can bring that forward, it's inspiring, and you can touch on both sides of what people can relate to, whether they're men or women who are following you, because being interested in empowering females is not just about being a leader for females, right? Like, I have 4 men on my team, and of course they're my priority. And in terms of sort of working with them, it's not really any different.
Yeah, we could go a lot deeper on that, but I think we'll leave it at there, right? Because we could get into the feminine and the masculine in each of us, right? So
Sure.
that's more of a weekend workshop than a Zoom call here, but you're speaking to that in the way that you lead. So that's beautiful. I think just to kind of move in one more direction here for our time, there's, it's interesting. Square is known for its products mostly. I think in the marketplace, it's known for the vision that it has and the direction it's headed. Becoming. I'll just leave it at that. I just don't know what I can or cannot speak to.
How much you know.
Exactly. So, and also, it's like Square's culture, particularly in sales, has really grown, really developed over the last 2 years, and has become a tremendous asset. I spoke to, I refer people to Square. I'm like, looking for a job? You should go talk to Square, because I come across a lot of salespeople. Mm-hmm. And someone who recently started working with Square, who was a member of our programs for a few years, interviewed a couple current and ex-Square employees, and one of them got fired. And so he interviewed this person, and the person got fired from Square. And still their view was, no, you should definitely go work for them. Like, it's a great company. I did something stupid, right? Which speaks to how the impact that the culture has on people.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you see in what makes the culture so attractive and such an asset? And also, how have you seen that develop as Abundant has gotten more involved in the sales culture?
Yeah, I think the culture has definitely always been sort of a secret sauce. That's one of the main reasons I stay. That's, I think, one of the main reasons a lot of people stay. And to that point around tenure, it's cool to be somewhere for 7 years, but it's even cooler to be somewhere for 7 years when you look around and the person next to you has been there for 6, and the person next to them has been there for 5, and you're all growing and building together. It's not like just this one old guard person that never leaves, right? And I think that we really focus on developing the whole human. So that's how we talk about our management style. And it really feels like a very connected place. It feels very supportive. It does have that familial feel, in the sense that people truly care about each other. People feel really connected to the product, and I think to the company's purpose, and a real sense of belonging there, which drives people forward. And the constant growth opportunities and the strong culture of promoting from within and developing people from within and allowing them to take on new challenges and trusting them to do something they've never done before, rather than hiring someone in from the outside, because we easily could with the brand name and the great products that we have. I think all of that kind of goes a long way and creates just really like a sense of home for people, where they feel comfortable but not bored. Like I always say that at Square, I love that I feel challenged, but I don't feel stressed. Like it's sort of a really good happy medium that we've struck. So the burnout thing, even though we move really fast and we work really hard and we do a lot of stuff, I don't feel that sense of burnout at Square that I think a lot of other companies do experience.
That's awesome. All right. Well, yeah, and I will ask that other question again is, with the sales org, right? Also, as we've started to do more work, and the culture has really opened up in different ways, and is leading in the marketplace, right? Is doing some innovative things and how people come together and relate. What's that next level or layer that you're starting to see come online as more abundant influence is coming in?
Yeah, I think with more abundant influence, it has really created a much deeper sense of trust, particularly when I think about like our sales leadership group. We've done the most work, sort of, at least initially, at the top with our sort of sales exec group. Everyone's ambitious, right? And everyone wants to grow their career and move forward and own things and, do well. That's natural. And I think a lot of times in cultures, you can experience that in the negative, where people want to land grab, or people want to maybe not trust each other because they want the credit or the glory. And I think that, there probably was some of that. There probably still is some of that, but I think there was more of that before Abundant came in. I think when you guys came in, it really helped us like break down barriers and view ourselves as a unit and a true team, and one that, your success is my success, versus like these pillars and these individuals that owned separate parts of the business and all just wanted to skyrocket and move as fast as they could and kind of get that glory. So I think it's helped unite us at the top. And when that happens, the trickle down effect is really powerful, because now that's showing up in our frontline managers. They're opening up more. I think we do more reflection exercises. So similar to how I kind of reflected and then got to my purpose, we're creating space for people to do that for themselves as well.
I think that's really well put and really important to emphasize, because there's been a lot of space that's been created for people to create more meaning around the work that they're doing. That takes time and it takes intention. And that also adds a whole nother layer to the experience of work, when it's not just number, strategy, tactics, my action plan, right? It's what's the meaning behind all of that really makes me feel connected to this work and to be here. So beautifully put. And I think that's a great place for us to end. So thank you so much for hopping on today. And I look forward to continuing to see your growth as a powerful female leader at Square and in the marketplace.
Thank you, Ben. And bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
See you, everybody.